I remember tossing and turning on my bed, thinking about the uncertainty of the future. The sheets felt tangled around my legs, and no matter which way I turned, comfort eluded me. My mind raced through scenarios that hadn't happened yet, conversations that might never occur, problems that existed only in the realm of possibility. Each thought felt heavier than the last, pressing down on my chest until breathing became an effort. The darkness of my room seemed to mirror the darkness in my mind. The familiar sounds of the night, the distant hum of traffic, the settling of the house, the tick of the clock marking each restless moment, all felt amplified, almost mocking my inability to find peace. I felt as though I was falling into an abyss of anxiety, each worry pulling me deeper into a spiral of sleepless torment. Hours seemed to pass, or perhaps only minutes. Time had lost all meaning in this restless state. My body ached with tension, my jaw clenched, my shoulders rigid. The pillow beneath my head felt too hard, then too soft. The temperature was wrong, too warm, then suddenly too cold. Everything felt wrong, misaligned, as if I had forgotten how to simply be. In desperation, I began to focus on my breathing, trying to slow the racing of my heart in and out, in and out, gradually, almost imperceptibly. The frantic churning of my thoughts began to slow. The darkness behind my closed eyelids started to feel less oppressive and more like a gentle cocoon. As my breathing deepened, I felt a strange sensation beginning in my fingertips, a tingling warmth that slowly spread up my arms. It wasn't pleasant, it wasn't unpleasant either. If I think deeply, it's rather it felt like the first touch of sunlight after a long cold night. The warmth continued to spread through my body, and with it came the oddest feeling of weightlessness. The sensation of falling that had been so terrifying before began to transform. Instead of plummeting into an abyss, I felt as though I was being gently lowered by invisible and loving hands. The harsh edges of my anxiety softened, and the fall became more like floating, like being cradled by warm and supporting water. My surroundings began to shift in ways that defied logic, yet felt completely natural. The confines of my bedroom seemed to dissolve, the walls becoming transparent and then simply gone. The ceiling above me opened up to reveal not the apartment upstairs, but a vast sky filled with stars that pulsed with a gentle, living light. I was no longer falling but drifting, carried by currents of air that felt thick and nurturing, like being embraced by the atmosphere itself. Below me, the landscape transformed from the familiar urban sprawl outside my window into something far more ancient and sacred. When my feet finally touched solid ground, I found myself standing on earth that felt different beneath my bare feet, not the harsh concrete of the city, but soil that seemed to pulse with life. The air was rich with the scent of growing things, of rain washed earth, and blooming flowers whose names I didn't know, but whose fragrance spoke directly to some deep, forgotten part of my soul. Before me rose a mountain unlike any I had ever seen or imagined. It wasn't the stark, forbidding peak one might see in photographs, but something that seemed to breathe with ancient wisdom. Its lower slopes were shrouded in mist that moved with purpose, sometimes revealing glimpses of terraced gardens and groups of trees that seemed to glow with their own inner light. then concealing them again in veils of silver vapor. The mountain itself seemed to be calling to me, not with words, but with a pull that felt in my bones, in my blood, in the very core of my being. This wasn't a place I had stumbled upon by accident. This was where I had always been meant to come. Every restless night, every moment of anxiety, every time I had felt lost and alone, all of it had been leading me here to this sacred place that existed somewhere between sleep and waking, between the world I knew and the realm of infinite possibility. This was no ordinary peak. The mountain rose before me like a living temple, its slopes covered in ancient forest that seemed to hum with sacred energy. The air itself felt different here, thicker, more alive, infused with the scent of jasmine and sandalwood. In the distance, I could hear the faint tinkling of temple bells, carried on a breeze that felt like a mother's gentle touch against my skin. At my feet, carved from what appeared to be moonstone, began a pathway of steps that seemed to glow with their own inner light. Each step was worn smooth by countless pilgrims who had walked this path before me, their devotion polished into the very stone. As I placed my foot on the very first step, I felt a warmth spread through my entire being, as if the mountain itself was welcoming me home. The climb began easily, my feet finding their rhythm on the sacred steps. With each footfall, I felt the anxieties of my daily life beginning to dissolve like morning mist. The worries that had seemed so overwhelming in my bed now appeared small and distant, left far below in the valley of my former concerns. As I ascended, the forest around me grew more mystical. Ancient trees with silver bark reached towards the star-filled sky, their leaves shimmering like thousands of tiny mirrors, reflecting divine light. Between their branches, I caught glimpses of peacocks with feathers that sparkled like jewels. their calls echoing through the sacred groove like celestial music. It was not musical, but it was raw, it was real. Halfway up the mountain, I discovered a natural spring bubbling up from the earth. The water was so clear it seemed to be made of liquid light itself. As I cupped my hands and drank, the water tasted of nectar and starlight, filling me with a sense of peace I had never known. My reflection in the pool showed not my ordinary face, but someone luminous and serene, as if the divine spark within me was finally being revealed. The path continued upward, winding through groves of flowering trees whose blossoms fell like snow around me. Each petal that touched my skin carried a blessing, a whispered prayer from the mountain itself. The higher I climbed, the more I felt myself changing, becoming lighter, more translucent, as if I were slowly transforming from flesh into pure consciousness. The moon above seemed to grow larger and more radiant with each step, until it appeared close enough to touch. Its light painted everything in silver and pearl, creating a landscape that existed somewhere between dream and reality, between earth and heaven. As I rounded a bend in the path, I saw before me a clearing that took my breath away. In the center stood an ancient temple, not built by human hands, but carved from a single massive crystal that seemed to contain the light of all the stars. The temple pulsed gently with a rhythm that matched my heartbeat, as if the mountain's heart and mine were slowly synchronizing. The temple's entrance was framed by pillars of rose quartz and amethyst, and as I approached, I heard the most beautiful sound I had ever experienced. A humming that seemed to come from very fabric of existence itself. It was the sound of creation, of love itself vibrating through the cosmos. I removed my shoes before entering. Oh, wait, I was barefooted. How come I am wearing the shoes? Maybe Mother Earth was protecting my feet. Now I'm feeling the cool crystal floor beneath my feet. Inside, the temple was vast and filled with the softest light imaginable. Thousands of tiny crystals embedded in the walls caught and reflected this light, creating patterns that shifted and danced like living mandalas. At the far end of the temple, seated on a throne that seemed to be carved from a single lotus flower, made of luminous stone, was the most magnificent presence I had ever beheld. She, Shakti herself, the Divine Mother, the source of all creation and divine love. She, the personification of nature. Her form seemed to shift between visible and invisible, sometimes appearing as a beautiful woman with skin that glowed like burnished gold, sometimes as pure light, sometimes as the very space that contained all possibilities. Her eyes held the wisdom of eternity, yet also the tenderness of every mother who had ever lived. Her hair flowed like liquid starlight, and her smile contained all the compassion of the universe. Around her, the air shimmered with sacred symbols, lotus flowers that bloomed and dissolved in endless cycles, spirals of light that danced in perfect harmony, and geometric patterns that spoke directly to my soul without need for words. My child, she spoke, and her voice was like the sound of water flowing over stone, like wind through sacred grooves, like the first cry of life itself. You have carried such heavy burdens for one so tender. Come, let me ease your load. As she spoke, I felt drawn forward as if by invisible threads of light. With each step towards her, I felt layers of worry, fear, and doubt peeling away from me, like old clothes I no longer needed. By the time I reached her throne, I felt lighter than air, more myself than I had ever been. I was crying, crying like a baby. I don't remember when I cried last time. She extended her hand, and when I placed mine in hers, I felt the most profound sense of coming home. Her touch was warm and electric, sending waves of unconditional love through every cell of my being. In that moment, I understood that I had never been alone, that this divine presence had been with me always, waiting patiently for me to find my way back to her. The future you fear so much, she said softly, exists only in your mind. The present moment where we sit together now is the only reality. In this eternal reality, now you are safe, you are loved, you are perfect exactly as you are. As she spoke, I felt the last remnants of my anxiety dissolving completely. The uncertainty that had driven me to this sacred place now seemed like a gift, for without it, I would never have found my way to this profound peace. She placed her other hand on my heart, and I felt a warmth spreading outward from that point, filling my entire being with golden light. This light, she whispered, is your true nature. It has never left you, even in your darkest moments. Whenever you feel lost or afraid, remember this feeling. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and know that I am always here, always loving you. The blessing she gave me then was beyond words. It was a knowing deep in my bones that I was part of something infinitely larger and more beautiful than my individual concerns. I was unique and precious. I am the part of the divine creative force, a note in this eternal symphony of existence. Time seemed to stop as we sat together in perfect silence. I felt my consciousness expanding beyond the boundaries of my individual self, marching with the vast presence of the Divine Mother. In that union, I experienced what it meant to be truly whole, truly at peace. When she finally spoke again, her words carried the authority of absolute truth. Go now, my beloved child, back to your world of forms and dreams, but carry this knowing with you that you are never alone, never unloved, never without purpose. The path you walk, with all its uncertainties and challenges, is sacred. Every step is a prayer, every breath is a blessing. As she spoke, I felt myself beginning to fade from that crystal temple, but not with sadness. Instead, I felt complete, blessed beyond measure. The mountain, the temple, the Divine Mother herself, all of this began to dissolve gently around me, but not disappearing. Rather, I realized it was all becoming part of me, integrated into my very being. I found myself floating downward through layers of consciousness, past the crystal temple, past the sacred spring, past the glowing steps, but now carrying within me the eternal light of the Divine Mother's blessing. The anxieties that had once consumed me seemed like distant memories from another lifetime. As I descended through the soft darkness, I felt my body becoming heavier, more solid as I returned to the physical realm. But the peace I had found remained untouched, a golden core of serenity that would stay with me forever. I became aware again of my bed, of my room, of my physical form lying peaceful and relaxed. But I was no longer the same person who had tossed and turned with worry. I was now someone who had been touched by the infinite, blessed by the Divine Mother herself. My breathing had become deep and slow, my body completely relaxed. The future no longer seemed like a threatening unknown, but like an adventure waiting to unfold, guided by the loving presence that I knew was always with me. As sleep began to claim me, I felt wrapped in the Divine Mother's eternal embrace. Her love surrounded me like the softest blanket, her protection like an unbreachable shield of light. In this sacred space of perfect trust and surrender, I drifted into the most peaceful sleep of my life. The last thing I remember was her voice, soft as lullaby, whispering, "Rest now, my precious child. Dream of the beauty that awaits